Quick demo of this video tutorial. In this tutorial, we will develop a quiz application from scratch using Angular 5 and Web API using SQL Server database. So here we have the final output from this tutorial. First of all, we have to register the participant here. Name of the participant will be Fiona Green. Then email fiona123@gmail.com. Click on start. And here we have the 10 random questions from the database, one question at a time. Here we have shown a timer, and here we have a progress bar to indicate the number of questions attended by this participant. Here we have the serial number, here we have the question. Along with that, some of the question may have some image, and here we have the options. After completing 10 questions, here we have the result of this quiz program. Here we have the participant name, then score 9 out of 10, then time taken by the participant. If you want to submit this score to the Web API project, you can click on the submit button. And if you want to restart this quiz program, you can click on this button. And here we have the 10 questions with correct answers. Correct answer is marked with a green tick mark. If there is an incorrect answer, we will mark with incorrect text here. If you want to sign out from this application, you can click on the sign out button here. So from this tutorial, you have to learn a lot of things. So I hope you will find this tutorial helpful for your upcoming Angular 5 projects. So please watch till the end of this video tutorial. What's up YouTube, welcome to .NET Mob. In this video, I will show you how to develop a quiz application in Angular 5 with Web API. Before starting this video tutorial, I would like to ask you a favor. If you found this video helpful, please thumbs up this video. If you are new here, please be subscribed to this channel .NET Mob. First of all, we have to create an Angular 5 application inside this project folder. So let me copy this folder path from here and then back to VS Code editor here. Then go to file, then open folder, then paste the path reference here, hit enter, then click on select folder here. Now here we need to create an Angular 5 application. For that you can use Angular CLI command in your command prompt, or you can use integrated terminal from this IDE. For that you can go to view, then integrated terminal. In order to create an Angular 5 application, you can use this command ng-new, the name of the application. I will name this application as Angular 5. Hit enter. Currently it is creating an Angular 5 application. Along with that, it will install some default packages from npm. So I will be back after this installation process. Finally, we have successfully created the Angular 5 application. As part of that, we have a new folder with project name Angular 5. Inside this application, we need to create few components and service class. So here we have a brief structure of our Angular 5 application. Inside this application, we need to create 4 additional components: register component, navbar component, quiz component, and result component. Using this register component, we will register a new user with name and email address. After a successful registration, we need to show a top navbar. For that, we have a navbar component here. Inside this component, we will show the application name and a logout button. And here we have the quiz component. Inside this component, we will show random 10 questions from our database, one question at a time with its options. And finally, we have the result component. Inside this component, we will show the output or result of this quiz. Along with that, we will show questions and correct answers. Apart from these 4 components, we have a service class inside shared folder, quiz service. Inside this class, we will have common functions and functions for consuming Web API methods. And here we have the routes.ts file. Inside that, we have to configure routing for this small application. Finally, we have auth folder. Inside that, we have authguard.ts file. With this file, we will deal with authorization and authentication inside this application. So first of all, let me create these 4 components. For that, back to Visual Studio Code editor. Before creating these components, we have to navigate inside the project folder, which is Angular 5. cd Angular 5, hit enter. In order to create an Angular 5 component, you can use this Angular CLI command ng g for generate c4 component. First of all, we have register component, register. After that, we have navbar component, then quiz component, finally we have result component. So here we have created required components. In order to see these components, you can expand this src folder here. So here we have created navbar, quiz, register and result component. Now we have to create the service class quizservice.ts file. For that, let me create a folder with name shared. Inside that, we can create this service class. So right click on this folder, then open in command prompt. In order to create a service class, you can use this command ng g for generate, s for service, then name your service. Here I will name it as quiz. Now let me run this application. For that, we need to open one more terminal. So click on this plus button here. First of all, navigate into project folder Angular 5. Then use this command ng serve :open. It will compile and open this application in our default web browser. So here we have loaded our Angular 5 application from 4200. So this is how the default Angular 5 application looks like. Now let's customize this application. For that, back to VS Code editor here, then open index.html. For this application, I will be using Materialize CSS for front-end framework. So here we have Materialize CSS. It is almost similar to Bootstrap framework. In order to use this framework, we have to add few style sheet and JavaScript file inside index.html. First of all, we have the style sheet for this front-end framework. After that, we have a JavaScript reference for the framework. So I will paste the reference before this body end tag. In order to work this JavaScript file Materialize, we have to add script reference for jQuery library. So here we have added jQuery script reference. Along with this front-end framework, I will use Materialize icon from Google. In previous tutorial, we have used font over some icons. So here we have the style sheet reference for material icons. Then back to the default component, which is app component.ts, and corresponding HTML file will be this one, app component.html. I'm going to replace this default HTML with router outlet, router-outlet. In order to work this router outlet, we have to configure routing inside this application. For that, I will add a new file inside this app folder. Right click on it, then new file. I will name this file as routes.ts. In order to configure routing inside this application, we need a constant. So here it is, export constant. I will name this constant as app routes. It's of the type routes. Basically, it is an array of objects. In order to use this routes class here, we have to add an import statement here. Import routes from Angular router. Now let's add routers inside this application. For each route, we will have an object like this. Path is equal to register, then component is equal to register component. So here it is. You can click on this and it will automatically add the required import statement at the top of this file here. we need to add one route for quiz path is equal to quiz, then component is equal to quiz component. After that, we need a route for result, path is equal to result, then component is equal to result component. Finally, we need to add one route for default routing, so path is equal to empty string, then redirect to register component or register URL, and we have to set this path match as full. Now inside this file we have configured routing for this application. Now we need to tell the application to follow these routes. For that, open app-module.ts file. First of all, we have to import router module. So import router module from Angular router. Now inside this imports array here, we can do this router module dot for root function can be called. Inside that we have to pass this constant app routes. So let me copy this and pasting here. In order to add an import statement for this constant, you can use the shortcut hold Control then press period and click on this import statement here. Now let me save all of these modifications and back to the application here. So by default we are inside the register component. Now let's try quiz route. Let me copy this and pasting here, hit enter. So here we have the text from quiz component. Finally we have result route. So here we have the text from result component. So our application design will be almost like this. First of all, we have an app component. Inside that we need to show this register component with register route. After a successful registration, we will open this quiz path. Inside that, first of all, we will show a navbar component. Below that, we will show quiz component for loading random 10 questions, one question at a time. After completing these 10 questions, we will navigate to result route. There also we have navbar component for showing application name and sign out button. Below that we have result component. So this is the overall design for our application. Now in order to show navbar component inside quiz component route and result component route, we can do this. Back to VS Code editor, then open quiz component.html. Here we need to add selector for navbar component. Okay, for that go to navbar component TypeScript file. So here is the selector app-navbar. Let me copy that and pasting here. Now we need to add a tag with this app navbar. So this tag will be replaced with the HTML inside this navbar component HTML. Now we need to do the same inside result component also. Result component.html file. We will add the navbar here. Let me save all of these modifications. Then back to the application here. So with this result route we have, first of all we have the text from navbar component. Below that we have text from result component. Same in the case of quiz route also. Navbar works, quiz works. In order to participate inside this quiz program, user must be registered inside this application. For that, I'm going to create a registration form inside this register component.html file. For that, we will be using card component from front-end framework inside this materialize CSS here. Okay, we will be using one of these cards template inside this HTML file here. So here it is. Here we have a div with class card. Inside that we have another div with class card content. Inside this div, we want to design the registration form. You can see some form template inside this materialized CSS documentation. Just search for forms here. So here we have some sample forms here. Like this, we need to create one form inside this div here. So I will start with form tag, then hit tab. We don't need action attribute here. Instead of that, we need a local reference. Register form is equal to ng form. Okay, inside that we need two text boxes, one for name and one for email. So first of all, we need a div with class row. Inside that, we need another div with class input field call and s12. Hit tab. Inside that, before name text box, we need to show a material icon. It will be account circle, this one. So we can do this. We need an I tag with class material hyphen icons, then prefix class. Inside that, we have to give this icon name. Instead of space, we need to use underscore. So here we have account underscore circle. After that, we need an input control name attribute. It will be name itself. Then we need a local reference name, then ng model. So here we are designing this form using template driven approach in Angular 5. So that is why we have given this attribute ng model. After this input text box, we need a label. Inside that, we want to show name. So here it is, name. So here we have added a div for name text box. Like this, we need to add one more div for email also. So let me copy paste the div here. Instead of account circle icon, we have mail underscore outline. Name of this text box will be email. Then local reference will be email. Then same for label also. Finally, we have to add one more div for submit button. So here it is. We have a button with type submit, and here we have the required CSS class, and here we have the button text as start. In order to work this template driven approach, we have to import forms module inside app module.ts file here. First of all, let's add the import statement. Import forms module from Angular forms. Now we need to add this forms module inside this imports array here. Now let me save all of these modifications and back to the application here. So here we have a registration form for quiz participant. Now I want to add global CSS rules inside this application. So open styles.css, then I will copy paste the required CSS rules here. Let me save this and back to the application here. Now before this form, I want to add a form title or form header. For that, we will add two divs here. Div with class call, then s6. Like this, we need one more div. So let me copy this and paste in below that. Inside this first div, I will add an h2 header. Inside this header, we want to show quiz registration. And inside this second div, we want to show an image. So we need an img control here. Then we don't need this alt attribute. Now we have to add style attribute here. Width is equal to 250 pixel. Then height is equal to 250 pixel. And here we need to add one class. Class is equal to offset s3. Now we have to give image source inside this src attribute. I want to give this image logo.png. For that, I'm going to create a new folder inside this assets folder. Right click on it, then new folder. I will name this folder as img. Inside that we can copy this logo.png. Let me drag and drop inside this img folder here. So here we have logo.png. Now inside this src attribute we have to provide the respective image path. For that we can do this assets. Inside that we have img folder. Inside that we have the image logo.png. Let me save this and back to the application here. Now inside this form we need to add some validations. So back to the VS Code editor, I want to make this name text box as required. So we can add required attribute here. Email text box is also mandatory. So I will add the same required attribute here also. Now in order to validate the email format, first of all, I will add a pattern, email pattern property inside this TypeScript file here. Now back to the component HTML, then add this attribute pattern is equal to email pattern property. Let me copy this and paste in here. Let me save all of these modifications and back to the application here. So if I try to enter something inside this text box, then clear the text, you can see a bottom red border indicating form validation error. So this is what we have done inside this styles.css rules. Okay, here we have given this style. If there is an input control with these two classes ng-invalid and ng-dirty, we will show a bottom red border. So this ng-invalid class will be applied when the form control is not valid, and this ng-dirty class will be applied whenever there is a change from its initial value. Now I want to disable this submit button whenever this form as a whole is not valid. For that we can do this. We will add the disabled attribute for this button here. Disabled attribute will be applied whenever this register form is not valid. Okay, let me save this and back to the application here. So initially you can see that this submit button is already disabled. If I try to enter something inside this text box, you can see that this submit button is enabled. Here we have a problem with email text box. Even though this email is not in correct format, we don't have any form validation error. So let me back to the VS Code editor here. We have given this pattern attribute here with email pattern property, and here we have given the pattern inside result component.ts file. Sorry, here we need to add this email pattern property inside register component.ts file instead of result component.ts file. Let me save all of these modifications and back to the application here. Initially submit button is disabled. Let me try to enter something inside these text boxes. Here we have an invalid email format. Let me complete the email address with a valid format, gmail.com. That's it. So here we have completed with quiz registration form. Before continuing with this Angular 5 project, we have to create a Web API project with required Web API methods. Before Web API project, we have to create SQL Server database. So here is my SQL Server Management Studio. So let's create a database. For that, right click on databases, then new database. I will name this database as QuizDB. Click on OK. So here inside this QuizDB, we have to create two tables, one for participant and one for questions. So first of all, let me create one table for participant. So starting with participant ID column, participant ID as integer, then we have name column as varchar 50, then email varchar 50, then score as integer. Finally we have time spent column as integer. We will save the participant name and address inside these two columns. After completing this quiz program, we have to update the score and total time taken for this quiz program. I want to set this participant ID column as the primary key. I want to set the same column as identity specification. So go to column properties, then expand identity specification, set is identity as yes. In order to save this table, you can use the shortcut Control S, and I will save this table as participant. Click on OK. Now let me create one more table for questions. First of all, we have ID column, Q and ID, it's of the type integer. Then we have question column, it's of the type varchar 250. And we have image name column as varchar 50. Then we have options, option 1 as varchar 50, then option 2 as varchar 50, then we have option 3 as varchar 50, finally option 4 as varchar 50. Finally, we need one more column for correct answer. So column name will be answer, it's of the type integer. So complete question description will be saved inside this Q and column. Then inside this image name column, we will save the name of image associated with this question. We will save those images in our WebAPI project later. And we have 4 option columns, option 1, option 2, option 3 and option 4. Finally, we have the answer column. Inside this column, we will save the correct option index. If the correct answer is option 1, we will save 0 inside this answer column. If it is option 2, we will save 1 inside this column answer. So it is basically like index in an array. It will start from 0, then 1, 2 and 3. I want to set this column as primary key. I want to set the same column as the identity specification. So select the column, then go to column properties, then expand identity specification, then set is identity as yes. In order to save this table, you can use the shortcut Control S. I will name this table as question. Click on OK. Now inside this question table, I want to insert some questions. For that, I have prepared an SQL script. So let me open one more tab here. Then make sure that we have selected the QuizDB here. Then I will paste the script here. Click on execute. So here we have inserted few questions inside our question table. Now right click on this question table, select top 1000 rows. So in total we have inserted 17 questions inside this question table. Now let's look how we can work with this database inside WebAPI project. So let me create a WebAPI project. For that, here is my Visual Studio IDE. In order to create a new project, you can click on this new project here, or you can use the shortcut Control Shift N. Then select web under Visual C#, then select ASP.NET Web Application. Then name your application here. I will name it as Web API. Then select the location where you want to save this application here. Now click on OK. Now select Web API template. Keep other options as it is. Click on OK. So here we have created a brand new WebAPI project. In order to run this application without debug mode, hold Ctrl then press F5. In this WebAPI project, we have to create some WebAPI methods. But we have a problem to consume those WebAPI methods from this Angular 5 application. That is, this WebAPI project will block requests from another website which is hosted in a different domain or in a different port number. So we have to enable CORS inside this WebAPI project. CORS, Cross Origin Resource Sharing. If we can enable CORS inside this WebAPI project, then we can consume these WebAPI methods from this Angular 5 application. So let's look how we can enable CORS inside this WebAPI project. In previous video tutorials, we have already discussed. Select the project from Solution Explorer, then go to Tools, Library Package Manager Console. In order to install WebAPI.Cors, you can use this NuGet command. I have given these commands in video description. You can copy paste from there. Now hit enter. Once installation is successful, let me build this solution. For that, you can use the shortcut Ctrl Shift B, or you can go to build, then build solution. Now back to the application here. If you reload this page, some of you may get this problem. It is due to the version difference between system.web.http and installed WebApi.Cors package. Here you can see that here we have installed WebApi.Cors with version 5.2.4.0, and here we have system.web.http 5.0.0.0. Now we have to update this. For that, first of all, you have to run this command, update command in package manager console. Let me paste the command here. I have given all of these commands in video description. You can copy paste from there. Now hit enter. Now we have to reinstall core packages, WebApi.Core packages. So here we are going to install WebApi.Core packages, not WebApi.Cors. So this will install core assemblies with latest version. So it will update this system.web.http. Now hit enter. Now let me build this solution again. Reload this page. So here we have successfully installed WebApi.Cors package, and along with that we have updated WebApi.Core assemblies. Now we have to configure this WebApi project in order to allow requests from this port number 4200. So back to Visual Studio, then inside the Solution Explorer, there you can see a folder app-start. Inside that we have WebApi config file. Inside that we have to add this extra line here. In order to use this enable course class, we have to use this namespace system.web.http.Cors. Now I want to format data response from this WebApi project. For that, you can expand this global.sx file here. Inside that we have this C# file. Here we need to add these two lines here. So here we have set this JSON formatter, and here we have removed XML formatter. Now it's time to create WebApi controls inside this project. Before that, I want to add ADO.NET entity model for the database that we have just created. So right click on this models folder here, then add new item, select data from the left panel, then select ADO.NET entity data model. I will name this data model as DB models. Click on add, select generate from database, click on next. Now click on new connection here. Here we need to provide the SQL Server instance details. For me it is local /SQLE 2012. Then select database from this drop down here. We have to select this QuizDB. Click on OK. After creating this entity model, there will be a class with this name. In order to interact with database, we have to create an object of this class. So I am going to edit this class name here as DB model. Click on next. If you have more than one version of entity framework, you have to select one version. Then click on next. Then select the database objects that we need to add inside the entity model. I will select these two tables, participant and question. Click on finish. So here we have successfully created the entity model. So this is how the diagrammatic representation of entity model looks like. Now back to the Solution Explorer. We have to create two controllers here. First of all, I will add a controller for participant. Right click on this controllers folder, then add controller. Select WebApi2 controller empty. Click on add. I will name this controller as participant. Click on add. So first of all, we have to create a WebApi method to insert a new participant. So it will be of the type HTTP post, and here is the route attribute for the method API/insert participant. So method will be something like this, public, and this method will return an object of participant class. Participant. We have to add the corresponding namespace. Sorry, something went wrong. Here we have the participant class inside the DB model. Okay, here we have misspelled participant. in order to modify this, we have to start from our database itself. We have to rename this table here. Press F2 in order to rename this table name participant. Hit enter. Now back to Visual Studio. Now double click on this dbmodels.edmx. Now remove this participant from here. Right click on it, then delete from model. Click on yes. Now we have to insert the table again. For that, right click here, then update model from database. Expand this tables node, then select participant. Click on finish. So here we have added updated participant entity model. Now let me save all of these modifications. So here we have updated participant class name with correct spelling. Now let me copy this class name from here, then paste inside this participant control. In order to use this class, we have to use this namespace WebAPI.models. I will name this method as insert. For this method, we have a single parameter. It's of the type participant class model. First of all, I will start with using statement. Inside that, we will create an object of db model as db is equal to new db model. In order to insert a new record inside the participant table with these details, we can do this db.participants.add. For this function, we will pass this model. Finally, we need to call the function db.savechanges. After all, we will return the model, return model. After inserting a new participant, Entity Framework will update newly added record participant ID inside this property here. Like this, we need to add one more WebAPI method to update score and time taken by the participant. So it will be of the type HTTP post, and here we have the route for that WebAPI method, API/update output. So it will be something like this: public void update output. For this function, we have a single parameter participant like we have in insert WebAPI method. Let me copy that and pasting here. I will start with using statement. So let me copy this using statement from this insert WebAPI method and pasting here. Then we can do this db.entry. Inside that, we will pass this model dot state is equal to entity state dot modified. Finally, we need to call this db.savechanges function. This method does not return any data, so let me remove this line from here. Now we have to create one more controller. Right click on controllers folder, then add controller. Select WebAPI2 controller empty, then click on add. I will name this controller as quiz controller. Click on add. First of all, inside this controller, we need a WebAPI method which returns 10 questions. So it will be of the type HTTP get, and here we have the route attribute for this WebAPI method, API/questions. So it will be something like this: public HTTP response message, and this function name will be get questions. For this function, we don't have any parameter. I will start with using statement. Inside that, we will create a db model object. In order to use this class, we have to use this namespace model namespace. So let me copy this from participant controller, then pasting here inside quiz controller db model as db is equal to new db model. Now from this WebAPI method, we have to return 10 questions from questions table. Here we have the questions table inside our database. Out of this, we have to select 10 random questions. For that, we can do this. We have a variable QNS. Inside that, we have selected random 10 questions from our questions table. So here we have selected all columns from question table except this answer column. During development of Angular 5 application, we will discuss why we skip this answer column. So here we have selected 10 random questions out of 17 questions. Now I want to format this questions array such that these 4 options will be saved under a new options array, because it will help during the design of our Angular 5 application. In order to format this questions array, we have done this. So here we have selected all these columns, but these 4 options are saved in another options array here. Finally, we have to return this random 10 questions. For that, we can do this dot request dot create response, and here we have returned this updated property with this anonymous object format. So with this function, we will return 10 random questions out of 17 questions. Finally, we have to create one more web API method to return answers for these 10 questions. Okay, so it will be of the type HTTP post. Because of some security reasons, it would be better if you can use HTTP post. And here is the route attribute for this web API method. Method will be something like this: public HTTP response message. Method name will be get answers. For this method, we have integer array as parameter. Int array q IDs. So inside this parameter, we will have 10 question IDs which we have returned from this method get questions. In order to return answers for given IDs, I will start with using statement. We have db model as db is equal to new db model. Inside that, we can do this. Here we have selected answers for given question IDs, and finally we have returned the result back to the caller. From this web API method, we have returned an integer array of answers. And inside the returned answer array, we have maintained the order of question IDs that we have received through this integer array parameter QIDs. That means inside the returned integer array, first element will be the answer of the first question inside this QIDs array. In order to maintain this order, we have added order by statement here. We have to do one more thing. Inside this question table, we have a column image name. Inside the column, we will save the name of image related to the question. If there is no image related to question, then we have null value inside the column. Otherwise, we will have name of image. Now we have to save these images inside Web API project. For that, right click on this project, then add new folder. I will name this folder as images. Inside the folder, we have to add these 2 images. So let me cut these 2 images from here, and we have to paste those images here. So here we have completed with Web API project. Rest of the development will be in Angular 5 application. So let me save all of these modifications, then build this solution. Now back to VS Code editor. So far inside this Angular 5 application, we have designed a quiz registration form. Now we have to insert a new participant with this given participant name and email address by calling this Web API method insert. So let's look how we can consume this Web API method from this Angular 5 application. Here we have the quiz service class. From this service class, we will consume Web API method. Before that, I would like to divide this quiz service class into 3 parts. First of all, we will have class properties. After that, we have helper methods. Below this part, we will have common functions for this application. Along with that, we have class constructor. After all, we have HTTP methods. Under this part, we will have functions to consume Web API methods from this project. First of all, inside this quiz service class, I will add a new property, root URL. Inside this property, we will save the Web API base URL. So let me copy this and pasting here. In order to consume Web API method from this project, we have to inject HTTP client. So we can do this private HTTP, it's of the type HTTP client, Now let's add an import statement for this HTTP client class here. Import HTTP client from Angular common HTTP. In order to consume this WebAPI method insert, we can add a new function here. Insert participant. It has two parameters, name and email. First of all, we have a body variable. Inside that we have passed participant name and email address. Finally, we have made the post request by calling this HTTP post method. First parameter will be the URI for this WebAPI method. Inside this root URL, we have the base URL for this WebAPI project. And after that, we have appended this route attribute /API insert participant. Finally, we have passed this body variable with participant name and email address. Now we can call this insert participant method from this form submit event. So let's wire up a form submit event. For that, here we have the component HTML, register component HTML, and here we have the submit event ng submit. In order to pass values from these text boxes, we have used local reference, name and email. Name.value, then email.value. Now we have to define this onSubmit function in corresponding TypeScript file. So here we have register component.ts file. Here we need to define the function onSubmit. For this function, we have two parameters. Name, it's of the type string. Then we have email, it's of the type string. Here we need to call this service class function insert participant. For that, we have to inject this quiz service inside this component. So we can do this private quiz service. It's of the type quiz service class. Now click on this, it will automatically add the import statement also. So here we have the quiz service, corresponding import statement is added here. Now we can call the function. For that, we can do this dot quiz service dot insert participant. Into this function we can pass name and email address, name comma email. This insert participant function will return an observable, so we can subscribe to that observable here. Call subscribe function. Inside that, I will declare an arrow function with a single parameter data. It's of the type any. After successful registration, we have to navigate quiz component. For that, first of all, let me inject router here. Private route, it's of the type router class. For that, we have to add the import statement. So hold Control, then press period and click on this import statement. Now we can do this dot router dot navigate. Inside that, we can pass an array like this / here inside this route.ts file we have configured corresponding path as quiz. So let me copy this and pasting here. Along with this registration, I want to implement some sort of participant authentication. For that, here inside this WebAPI project, from this insert WebAPI method, we have written updated participant object after insertion. Inside this subscription, I will save those details. For that, I will use local storage. First of all, we will clear local storage. After that, we will save those data or participant object with updated data from this WebAPI method inside local storage with key participant. I will tell you how we can use this local storage participant for participant authentication in a bit. I will tell you how we can use this local storage participant for participant authentication. Before that, since we have used HTTP client here, we have to add corresponding module inside app.module.ts file. That means we have to use HTTP client module. So first of all, we have to add the corresponding import statement here. Import HTTP client module from Angular common HTTP. Now we need to add this class inside this imports array here. Along with that, we have to add quiz service inside this providers array. Now let me add the corresponding import statement. For that, hold Control, then press period. Click on this import statement. Now let me save all of these modifications and back to the application here. Now I'm going to insert a new participant. Participant name will be Angelica. Then email address will be angelica123@gmail.com. Now click on start. So here we have inserted a new participant and we have navigated into quiz component. Now let me check the database. Here we have my management studio. Right click on participant table, then click on this select top 1000 rows, and here we have the record for Angelica. After successful registration, we have saved a similar JSON string object inside the local storage with this key participant. Now let's look how we can use this participant in order to implement some sort of authentication inside this application. In this video, we are going to implement client-side authentication using this local storage participant. If you are serious about user authentication, we have discussed how to implement user registration and how to implement login and logout in Angular 5 with Web API using token-based authentication. If there is no authentication, participant can participate quiz program without registration. Let me show you what I meant by that. Here we have already registered. Now let me open this same application in incognito mode. By default, we are inside the register component. If I want to access the quiz program, we can directly enter the quiz component URL here. Hit enter. Here we are inside the quiz component. In order to avoid these problems, we are going to implement user authentication. So let's look how we can do that. As we have discussed in project structure, we need one more auth folder. Inside that, we have to create authguard.ts file. So inside this project, I'm going to create one more folder. Right click on here, then new folder. I will name this folder as auth. Inside that, we have to create one authguard. So right click on it, then open in command prompt. In order to create a guard file, we can do this ng g for generate, then g for guard. I will name this guard as auth guard. So we just need to type auth here. Hit enter. So here we have successfully created the auth guard. Here we have the class auth guard. It implements can activate interface from Angular library. So we need to define this can activate function. This function can return these types of data, but in case of this application, we will return a Boolean data, indicating whether the current component is allowed to access or not. So first of all, we can do this. So first of all, we will check local storage participant. If it is not null, we can say that this participant is already registered. So in that case, we will return true. If participant is not registered, we have to open register component here. For that, first of all, let me define the constructor here. Now we need to inject router here. Private router, it's of the type router. Now we need to add the corresponding import statement here. We need to import router from Angular router. If user is not registered, we will navigate register component. Along with that, we will return false. So inside this authguard class, we have defined how do we want to implement user authentication inside this application. Now we need to tell the application about this authguard class. For that, open app-module.ts file. Then we need to add authguard class inside this providers array. Let me add the corresponding import statement. Hold Control, then press period. Click on this import statement. Now open routes.ts file. Here we need to authenticate these two components, quiz component and result component. For that, we can do this. Can activate is equal to, we have to pass an array. Inside that, we have to pass authguard. We need to pass the same property for this result component also. Let me copy this and pasting here. Now let me save all of these modifications. And back to the application here, I'm going to open this same application in incognito mode. By default, we are inside the register component. If I try to access quiz component here, we will be redirect to register component. Same with result URL also. Result, hit enter. Since we are not authenticated, we will be redirect to register component. After successful registration, here we are inside the quiz component. Inside this quiz component, we will show 10 random questions, one question at a time. For that, we have to consume this WebAPI method from quiz controller, this one, get questions. So first of all, let me define a function for consuming this WebAPI method inside this quiz service class here. So here is the function get questions. Here we have called get function from HTTP object. Inside that we have passed the URI for this WebAPI method. Here we have the base URL. After that we have appended route attribute API/questions. Now we can call this function from quiz component TypeScript file. I will call the function inside this ng-onIt lifecycle hook. Before that, we have to inject required classes here. First of all, we have injected router and then we have injected quiz service. Now let me add required import statement. Hold Control, then press PD. Click on this import statement. Same for quiz service class also. In order to call this function get questions, we can do this dot quiz service dot get questions. It will return an observable, so we can subscribe to that observable here. Subscribe. Inside that we will define an arrow function. Data, it's of the type any, and here we have the function body. This WebAPI method will return 10 random questions. So we need to save those 10 random questions inside this Angular 5 application. For that, I'm going to add few properties inside this quiz service class here. Under this properties section, we need to add few properties. First of all, we have an array QNS in order to store 10 random questions. After that, we have seconds property. It's of the type number. Inside that, we will save the total time taken by the participant. After that, we have timer property. Using that property, we will count the time taken by the participant. And finally, we have the queue and progress. It's of the type number. Inside that, we will save the number of questions attended by the participant. So inside this quiz component, we have to save those 10 questions inside this property QNS array. So we can do this dot quiz service QNS is equal to data. Inside this data property, we have 10 random questions. Now I will define one more function for time counter, start timer. Inside that, we have initialized this timer property by this function set interval. Inside this function, we have incremented seconds property by 1 upon each 1 second interval. Okay, here we have the function. This function will be called after each 1 second. Here we have given 1000 as millisecond. It is equal to 1 second. Now let's start the timer after retrieving those 10 questions. So we can do this dot start timer function can be called here. Before all of these operation, we have to initialize these properties. So we can do this. We have initialized seconds to 0 and we have initialized queue and progress is equal to 0. Now we can design this quiz component. For that, you can open quiz component.html file. First of all, we have app navbar. So first of all, we have to design navbar component. So here is the corresponding HTML file. Here we are going to use navigation component from materialize CSS. Navbar. It will be almost similar to these navbars here. Now let me copy paste the HTML code that I have prepared for navbar inside this application. Here we have a nav component. Here we have an application name. Along with that, we have a sign out button. Now let me save all of these modifications and back to the application here. So here we have the navbar. Along with that, we have a sign out button. Now I'm going to add a click event for the sign out button. So here we have the corresponding HTML. So here we have the click event. When we click on this button, we will call this sign out function. Now we need to define this sign out function inside the corresponding TypeScript file here, navbar component.ts file. So here we have the function sign out. Along with that, we have to inject router and quiz service class here. Now let me add the required import statement here. Inside this sign out function, first of all, we have cleared local storage, and then we have cleared the timer. Finally, we have navigated to register component. So here we have completed with navbar component. Now back to the quiz component.html file here. Below this application navbar, we want to show 10 random questions out of 17 questions, one question at a time. For that, I will start with raw div. So we want a div with class raw. We will show this div only when we fetch these 10 random questions inside this property. So we want to show and hide this div. For that, I'm going to use ngIf directive. So this div will be visible only when we fetch random questions inside this property QNS array. Inside that, we have one more div with classes called S8, then offset -S2. In order to show a question, we are going to use card component from materialize CSS. So card components will be almost looks like this. So let me copy paste the HTML for card component here. So here it is. Here we have a div with class card. These two classes will give a background color for this div. Inside that, we have another div for card content. Inside this span, we will show the serial number of questions. For that, we will use the queue and progress property from quiz service. It will start from 0. So in order to get the corresponding serial number, we will add 1 to that. Below that, we will show the exact question description with a paragraph. So here we have the array QNS from quiz service class. And here we have provided the indices using this QNS progress, and inside that we have a property QN for question description. Properties inside this QNS array can be understood from this web API method get questions. So here we have QN ID, QN, image name, and finally we have the options array. Below this question description, we want to show image related to question. For that, we will have another div here. We will show this div only when if there is an image related to question. So here we have the ngIf directive based on this image name column. If it is not null, we will show this div. Otherwise, we won't show this div. Inside the div, we have an img control with class sender, and here we have the source of image. Here we have the base URL for this web API. And this property is defined inside this quiz service here, root URL, and these images are saved inside this images folder. So that's why we have concatenated /images/, and inside this array we have the image name. Okay, finally we have set this style attribute for width and height. After all, we have to display options related to this question. For that, we can use this CodAffection div. So let me copy paste the code for list options. So here we have the UL component, and here we have the ng container. Inside that, we have ng for directive for iterating through these options. On each iteration, each option will be stored inside this option variable, and index will be stored inside this I variable. Inside that, we have this list item li. For some questions, there might not be 4 options. As you can see here we have 2 options, true or false. For option 3 and option 4, value will be null. So in those cases, we have to hide this li element. For that, we have added this ngIf directive here. Finally, we have to wire up this click event. We will call this answer function. Now we need to define this answer function inside the corresponding TypeScript file here, quiz component.ts file. Into this answer function, we have passed current question ID and selected option index. So function will be something like this. And so for this function, we need two parameters, QID and choice. Let me save all of these modifications and back to the application here. Boom, that's it. Here we have shown the first question. Here we have the question serial number 1, then we have the question description, and if there is an image related to question, we will show that image below this question description. And here we have the available options. Along with this question, we want to show two more things. First of all, we need to show the timer that we have just started with this function, and then we need to show one progress bar indicating number of questions attended by this participant. So let's look how we can do that. So here we have the quiz service class. Inside that I will add a function display time elapsed. Seconds taken by this participant will be saved inside this seconds property because of timer that we have just started with this start timer function, and we need to show this time in hour, minute, second format. So that is what we have done inside this display time elapsed function. Now using this function, we can show the time elapsed by the participant inside this quiz component.html. For that, I will add an extra span here. Time elapsed is equal to, we will call the function that we have just defined. Now we need to show a progress bar indicating number of questions attended by this participant. For that, we can use preloader component from Materialize CSS. So we need a progress bar like this. Corresponding HTML will be like this. So percentage of completion is defined with this width property. In case of our application, we can add this div here. It will have a class progress. Inside that we have another div with determinate, and here we have defined the width property using Q and progress property. So this will give the serial number of question, and in order to get a percentage we have multiplied with 10. Now let me save all of these modifications and back to the application here. So here we have the time elapsed by the participant, and here we have the progress bar indicating number of questions attended by this participant. Now we need to define the click event for this list item. We have already wired up a click event for this li element. Here we will call this answer function, and here we have defined the function. Inside the function we have to update or increment Q and progress property. For that we can do this. Inside this web API method, you can see that we have returned an array with these properties QNID, QN, image name and options array. Okay. And here we have added one more property, answer. Inside this property, we will save the selected option index. If first option is selected, then we will save 0 here. For second option, we will save 1 and so on. After that, we have incremented this Q and progress property here. Finally, we need to check this condition. If Q and progress is equal to 10, that means this quiz program is completed. In that case, we will clear this timer, and then we will navigate to result component. Now let me save all of these modifications and back to the application here. For now, I will attend these 10 questions in a random way. So here you can see the time elapsed, and here we have the progress bar to indicate the number of questions attended. After attending the 10 questions, here we are inside the result component. Here we need to display output or result of this quiz program by evaluating choices selected by the participant. Along with that, we have to show the 10 questions with correct answers. So let's look how we can do that. In order to evaluate choices selected by the participant, I'm going to consume this web API method getAnswers. For this web API method, we have an array of QIDs. For this web API method, we have to pass an array with question IDs. And this web API method will return an array of answers with the same exact order as we have given question IDs inside this array. So back to VS Code editor, open quiz service class. Inside that we have to create one function to consume the web API method. So here we have the function getAnswers. Here we have declared a local variable body. We have to initialize this variable with an array of question IDs. So that is what we have done here. Here we have the array of objects QNS. Inside that we have 10 random questions given to the participant. In order to retrieve the question IDs, we have done this QNS.map function can be called. Inside that we have selected QNID, that means question ID. Finally, we have made this post request. First parameter will be the URI for this web API method. Here we have used this route /API/answers. As a second parameter, we have passed an array of question IDs. This request will return an array of answers. Using that, we will evaluate the choices selected by the participant. For that, I'm going to add one more property here, correct answer count. It's of the type number. We have initialized with 0 here. Now back to result component TypeScript file. First of all, let me inject required classes inside this component class. We need to inject quiz service and router. Now let's add required import statement. Hold Control, then press period. Click on this import statement. Same for router also. Inside this component ng-only lifecycle hook, we need to call this getAnswers function. For that, we can do this dot quiz service dot getAnswers. This function will return an observable, so we can subscribe to that observable here. Inside this subscribe function, we need to define an arrow function with a single parameter data. It's of the type any. Then we have the function body here. Inside this function, first of all, I will reset the correct answer count property to 0. For that, we can do this dot quiz service dot correct answer count is equal to 0. This dot quiz service dot QNS. So here we have the 10 random questions array. We are going to iterate through each items inside this array. For that, we will use for each. Inside that, we have an arrow function with two parameters, element and index. First of all, we will compare the choice selected by the participant and correct answer from this array. For that, we can do this if e.answer property is equal to the correct answer from data array. So inside this answer property, we have saved the choice selected by the participant inside this quiz component here. So here we have saved the choice selected by the participant inside this answer component, and here we are comparing the choice selected by the participant with correct answer. If they are equal, we can increment this correct answer count property. So let me copy this and pasting here. Then unary increment operator. In order to show the 10 random questions with correct answers, I'm going to add one more property inside this QNS array. For that, we can do this e.correct is equal to data of this index. Now we can design this result component HTML. For that, let me open corresponding HTML file here, result component.html. First of all, we need a div with class row. Inside that, we need another div with class call, then s8, then offset -s2. Then first of all, I will add an h2 header with class header. Inside that, I will show this text completed. Below this header, we need to show the result or output of this quiz program. For time being, I have prepared the HTML for displaying result of this quiz program. So let me copy paste the required HTML here. First of all, we need an image. It will be a trophy image. So let me drag that image into this project folder here. Here we are inside the assets folder. Inside that we have img folder. So I will drop the image here. And here we have shown the participant name. In order to show the participant name, we have to create a new function getParticipant inside the quiz service class here. So here it is, getParticipant name. During registration, we have saved JSON string for participant details inside this local storage participant. Here we have converted JSON string back to JSON. Finally, we have returned the participant name. Below this participant name, we have shown correct number of answers out of 10. After all, we have shown time taken by this quiz participant. Here we have a button with text submit. This button can be used to submit this code to the Web API project. We need to wire up a click event for the submit button that we can do in a bit. In the same way, here we have another button to restart this quiz program. Now we have to wire up a click event for this submit button. Inside that, we will submit this score and time elapsed by the participant using this Web API method update output. So first of all, let me create a function inside quiz service class here in order to consume the Web API method update output. So first of all, we have converted JSON string of participant details into this body variable. And here we have updated score and time elapsed by this participant. And finally, we have made this post request here. This Web API method has this route API/output. So here we have concatenated the corresponding route. Finally, we have passed this post data body. Now we can call this function inside the submit button click event. So let's add one click event for this button. On this button click event, we will call this function onSubmit. Now we need to define this onSubmit function inside the corresponding TypeScript file here. So here it is. Here we have onSubmit function. Inside that, we have called this submit function. This function will return an observable. So here we have subscribed to that observable. After successfully updating participant score and time elapsed by the participant, we need to restart this quiz program. So here it is. We have created a function restart. Inside the function, we have navigated quiz component again. Now inside this subscription, we can call this function this dot restart. Now we need to wire up this restart function inside this restart button here. For that, we can do this on click event. We will call this restart function. After displaying output or result of this program, we need to show 10 random questions with correct answers. To save the time, I have prepared the HTML and I will paste the code here. First of all, we have the header here. After that, we have ng container. Inside that, we have iterated through this array QNS. Inside this QN variable, we will have question of current iteration. Along with that, we will have the current index inside this I variable. It is almost similar to this quiz component HTML here. Here we have shown the question. Below that, we have shown the available options. In the same way, here we have shown question serial number, then question. If there is an image related to the question, here we have shown the image, and below that we have shown the option. Along with that, we have two additional span here. Here you can see a span. Inside that, we have shown a green check circle. So this icon will be shown to the option with correct answer. This span will be shown on incorrect answer. Now let me save all of these modifications and back to the application here. I'm going to start the quiz program again. Now let me attend the 10 questions in a random way. So here we have completed with this quiz program. Here we have the participant name, then score 2 out of 10, then time elapsed by this participant. If you want to submit this data onto the server, you can click on the submit button here. If you want to restart this quiz program, you can click here. And here we have the 10 questions with correct answer. Now we have a major problem. Data inside this application is not persistent. That means if you refresh this page, some of the data from our quiz service class will be gone. Same in the case of quiz component also. Let me navigate into quiz URL here. Now let me attend few questions here. Now if I reload this page, it will start from first question. We have to make this application persistent. For that, I will use local storage. So let's look how we can do that. First of all, we have register component, though we don't have any modification. During registration, we have saved participant details inside this local storage participant. Now go to quiz component. During each timer interval, we have to update the seconds elapsed by the participant inside the local storage like this. We will save the time taken or seconds inside this local storage seconds. And then here we have the answer function. This function will be called whenever participants select an answer from the given options. So after updating this answer inside this answer property, we have to save this QNS array inside the local storage. For that, we can do this. We will save the QNS array inside local storage QNS. In the same way, we have to cache this QNProgress property. For that, we can do this. We have saved this QNProgress inside this local storage QNProgress. Now, in order to avoid the restarting of this quiz program due to reload of page, we can add this if statement inside this ngOnIt lifecycle hook. First of all, we will check whether we have already started this quiz program or not. If second is greater than 0, we will update quiz service properties, seconds, QNProgress, and QNS from local storage. After completing 10 questions, user will be navigated to result component to display the output of this quiz program. Suppose participant navigate back to quiz component using browser backward arrow. In that case, we will navigate result component. Otherwise, we will start the timer to continue the quiz program. Now we have to enclose this codes inside an else block here. Else. We have to close this else block here. Now inside this quiz component HTML, we need to add one more condition before showing this div here. So here it is. So we have to check whether we have already completed 10 questions. Now finally we have result component. Now let's check what are the things that we have to update here for local storage or cache. First of all, inside this ngOnIt lifecycle hook, check whether we have completed 10 questions. So here we have the corresponding condition. Inside this if block, we have populated quiz service properties, service, QNProgress, and QNS from local storage. After that, we have made this WebAPI request to retrieve the answers. So here we will close this if block. Inside this else block, we will navigate the participant into quiz component. That means if participant is not completed with 10 questions, we will navigate the user back to quiz component. Finally, inside this restart function, we have to reset local storage. For that, we can do this. We have reset QNProgress, QNS, and seconds inside local storage. Now let me save all of these modifications and back to the application here. Now let me attend few questions. Okay. Now if I reload this page, it should start from fourth question. So let's check that. So here we have the fourth question. Now let me complete this quiz program. Now if I reload this page, same result should be shown. So that's it. I can suggest some additional features and extension to this application. You can implement admin side for this application in order to add questions along with options and correct answers. For that, you can depend on our previous tutorial Angular 5 Web API CRUD operations. I have given the video link in video description. If you are serious about user authentication, you can check our previous 2 tutorials where we have discussed user registration and authentication in great detail. I have given those video links in video description. You can check from there. If you found this video helpful, please thumbs up this video. And for more awesome videos like this, please be subscribed to this channel .NET Mob. You can download the project source code of Angular 5 and Web API project with required SQL script from the link given below in video description. Please like and share this video with your friends and colleagues so that they can benefit from this. Have a nice day. Bye.